Before America's founders were born, and before the founders of other modern countries were born, already there was a breaching method entrenched. It is the same one that forced northern colonies and southern colonies more than 13 before America's founders were born to keep only criminally foreign influence records as in layers of them as collusions with the whole array. To stay then and now, people sensing for the breaching method, pretending other, or sensing anyone using what's actually being demonstrated by nature, with all exceptions in exception nature, being and haven't been used, tactical terrier from how nature does. Its system that uses what is true always, not leaving out the slightest sequence. Little kids could have used how we have black pupils, whites of eyes, to discern right through where and how there are mistreatments of principles with each of the sciences and with American history, individually grouped and together. Now, for example, the identities of the law are reliant upon people who define our founders, tactical ulterior from how our founders communicated for us to define themselves and why and how they had to make us only understand. I know the only individual we know the name of, as them plural, as our founders plural, those which really enabled the means to counter internationally monitored conversations of work, criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, the campuses, the difference of guilt at next to all location /S and name. The difference of guilt is right there where the breaching method is being demonstrated. It's a use of location /S every single place the human species body is. It is sickly distinctly against the individual voice of a leader, no matter how powerful they could get. Any grouping of countries, as long as locations, areas, and states are still self-valued roles, right where it's not self-valued too. The way the breaching method propagated self-cultivated roles only allowed fathomable. Otherwise, that body was sensed and it's adapted to, including if there's a majority of people, including if it's everybody. This wouldn't be effective, this breaching method, if we paid attention to principal treatments properly, and with each appreciation proper at each age of factory nature. The principle is that and how we have black pupils, whites of eyes, in a breaching method, reassigned what nature communicates up with that. Nature itself shows us. It is only sometimes it is only itself as criminal insidiousness. Nature. For example, even if all countries agree to take part with things like that, replacing and preventing, in short words, by its system with black pupils, whites of eyes, therefore with the color black, therefore, and with how and why it shows us its body is generating totally different species bodies to show us the body that all things share to an extent, and where the rest of its complete identity comes with itself. It's manifested as parts of itself, where that individual identity of value progression, that is not our species body, is not the other species body. But it shows us we are distinctly, are non-distinctly, and are simultaneously itself, which is also a further hyper-simultaneous nature, a distinct identity of simultaneous nature, just as to the parts of your body, your complete identity is a distinct identity of simultaneous nature from those parts, while it is non-distinct from them, and it is simultaneous from them, /hyper-simultaneous, because it is further its value nature system and its conjunction to the value of our short words and of their nature node. But we have at countries A through Z systems tactical ulterior from this, which nature communicates. People have said, well, what's your research? The research and polling, like when they ask what presidents, they ask questions about presidents chiefs, no. They ask president, regardless who's in office. because only one person could speak to people at a time. And no, the breaching method is manifest right where and how. At countries A through Z, there were collusions that no one wanted. Again, it was a breaching method entrenched. The same one that was entrenched with the design of the suburbs that are still manifest that way from America to Russia to Ukraine. Because other things, others ourselves, are blamed for what America's founders communicated for us to blame on the hyperforeign breaching method. So to speak, that which had slavery entrenched, for example, northern colonies and southern colonies, and roles with, even though that was against everyone, pretending that was debatable and using research as the fact that the breaching method had employed sickly, distinctly black pupils as victims. In other ways, we know simultaneously white survives before everyone becomes a victim, because now we're using black and white as systems tactile from nature's, therefore the Constitution unabridged, and we with rights that are too numerous to have to list, let alone law systems tactical from what nature shows us is proper with short words with convictions. And the people have been speaking about crimes. The breaching method showed them since they were kids they had self-guided rules of predicate acts with facts, and needs inside the nature of debate/debates to pretend other as a certain type of victim/hyper victim, child abused, middle-aged abused, and elderly abused, multi-front, little boys and girls, men and women, multi-front. That difference was played by a breaching method perfected before. Modern religious messengers were born, thank God, like our founders, to do damage control. But like our founders, their communications is replaced in our faces. There are self-guided roles and or roles sensing for the breaching method, and if everyone notes it. Note how in the beginning of the Old Testament it says only defend right here. I've never heard one person defend that part. You hear all the kinds of passions and emotions and nature debate. No one even defends that one part. It says only defend right here in the part that comes before it. And that's before the part with the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and Adam and Eve, and the names of their generation. And names have relative to this, are relative/hyper relative to this, to how nature shows us it is functional, being hyper invisible but still discernible. To teach about this, we have to have a name for this identity of value/value regression that is hyper invisible but still discernible, for example, as what is the identity of value regression. That is not us, but that is not the other species' bodies. But it is that, while it is that anyway, while it is what actually is generating things the way they are, true always, not denying, the slightest sequence shift, for example, the slightest finite detail left out. See, this breaching method showed people how to blame what it caused and forced, which is things left out, and then styles making subject treatments, especially with ones like slavery. There are all kinds of simultaneously revelations. There were private criminal enterprises, even ones that had nothing to do with slavery. The databases were criminally foreign influenced. Tools are part of a human fact treatment nature breaching method. /S. All were the forced roles, and the / part deals with their nature as criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and or of negative treatments. Black people, here, have we been trained? We have not been trained, but through and for the breaching method, but at countries A through Z, here Anthony, boxings, but makes us shush to hear. It prefers the shush sound boxing. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling are about fighting, but by the rules, but the rules have been abridged since semi-ancient times. This just reminds. In other words, where humanity has forgotten. which is that and how there is one way for everyone to fight and all win. Fuck sakes, begin. I'll donate, for example, if you guys will communicate with me, to countries A through Z. All I have to do is agree simultaneously, or say why not, and you guys will have the opportunity. In other words, I'll donate the idea of a so we have representatives of however many countries there are. Say there are 200 countries. There's like a little less than 200 or a little more, and or territories. Imagine them driving around a fast food restaurant. I don't know if they're, in other words, or if they still have anywhere natural, context. By the way, they cultivated. The ancients have been shown what causes positive value nature progressions, what causes negative value nature progressions, how to reveal evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere, the ground's identity, relationship to it too. They cultivated. We have propagated mass farming systems that can't defend their syntax without self-valuing the campuses they went to as victims / hyper victims. We rely on them. Look at when you see the mass, like cities, especially from the distance, when you see them from above, like in YouTube videos, and pictures behind people in the news of the cities, all concrete, nothing grows, all the water is tactically denatured. Is there even one brook in all of Brooklyn? If it is, it must be polluted as heck. See, in other words, we are in value nature systems, tactical ulterior from natures that communicates about positive and negative, and ways we are forbid to appreciate. We are forbid free speech. The breaching method knew that the roles that it forced that no one wanted, but they all were forced to self-value. That's not how to treat the subject. No. The subject treatments are ill, the names treatments, the exceptions, the difference of that. The reason, the logic experts, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a formal law identity, but I recorded them, the branch of government individually grouped them together, how as we could observe. At countries A through Z, haven't been used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw, and shown means and deeds to get away with that. As styles, it showed them how to read the law. Then it showed them nature's demonstrations of that. They need to hide from that because they knew that nature's going to be showing other to every little kid, let alone adults who remember how when we were kids, how when we adults, we're forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to self-value other things, others, ourselves, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded, blamed them what we knew was true always, like the breaching method. The breaching method is a scientific value that has been communicated to us by nature, and our founders left declassified about the breaching method, about how and about why they did not have free speech, about how and about why we cannot leave out why and how there's a witch trials place right next to Webb House, now again renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. Still with other communicated than our founders communicated to have communicated for that place. And all the founding locations are this way. There's a method. There are all kinds of collusions with predicate acts, with facts, organized crimes, methods that are way worse and have been facilitated most since before our founders were born. The overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, and the terrorists, and the countries shared A through Z individually grouped and together as systems tactical ulterior from the Constitution's unabridged. We have never had one voice of representation allowed to be. And when they try to be that, that body is sensed, no matter how powerful that leader could be. Locations, areas, and states are style, quality, aspects, and nature affected by this child abuse method, effectively being and having been pulled off. At countries A through Z, at locations, areas, and states A through Z, and/or self-guided roles, and/or role sensing anyone not with self-guided roles, even if it's a majority of people, even if it's everyone, and countering in ways syntactically that are maintained and were maintained. It's adapted to and it locks them right back in self-guided rules of the preaching method. All the subject treatments are ill. They're polling us on issues to trick and pretend they don't realize their obligations to know what we all want. We all want without being polled. We want the Constitution unabridged. We want the faked and changed transcripts and databases cleaned out. We want criminally foreign influence readings of statutes that we could have demonstrated if they would get on paper. And they recorded themselves. The breaching method shows them. It already showed names on all sides of criminal insidiousness, all sides of criminal and of civil cases, the lawyers, the conjunctions to all of them in that. And the news the same way. The names, the intelligence at the news or next to the network locations. The same ones at the same time. The difference of that as collusion also and/or their difference at the same ones involved with the public television and with their syntax. And roles with lawyers of the FBI and of the Wethersfield police involved with abuses of all ages of fact-treating nature, multi-front, for example. But you guys are preventing mandated law with the news involved with identity theft, fraud, slander. WFSB has roles with people intercities of Connecticut and intra-cities Connecticut since I was a kid, and there are proof since before I was born, including their roles with whiting forensics and state police families, involved also with the FBI and other agencies, foreign and domestic military, originally and still. Roles with that overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, witch trials, even if they're made up next to the founding locations, north and south, with slavery. And then America's founders were born. You got collusions against our founders, organized crimes with facts, roles worse than war crimes, against framing our founders for slavery, framing the Constitution for slavery, self-valuing this being and having been done. Oh, look, that's the precedent statute. That's not the proper reading of precedent statute. Let people be. Demand the premises, treatments, and exceptions, exception nature not left out as it is proper to be here, valued, and gathered, or it is forced from here as force, space, nature transfer, forced to there, lease of Hadis, time, religion, trade, then move to seas as the species body of individual bodies all at once, but being led by that which is functional, being hyper invisible, but still discernible, not leaving out the smallest finite detail and or voice. Evolution's fruits and gifts, it means from nowhere, come this way. Let's all rejoice. And we have a method too that nature shows us to check to make sure that those evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere that we reveal that they are not only evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere as criminal insidiousness nature. This breaching method only allowed names A through Z to only remember only criminal insidiousness natures of means to cause positive value nature progressions, action natures more and more. Self-value because of the breaching method's roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, the three branches of government, the difference of them. They're playing games with their difference. They're playing a shell game with over. That's what they're doing when they're pretending to be against Even to themselves, their delusions are all too at the same time. When they pretend to be against extremism and radical, uses of radical and or of extremism. In other words, all words. Let's all rehearse. Vaccines, please. WFSB is recorded capacity demonstrating, confirming. They have roles with people from Saudi Arabia and Facebook too, on Facebook, involved with World Trade Center predicate acts with them. They put me in fake conversations with themselves and with others about the World Trade Center attack. As people interstates, involved with the court next to the World Trade Center and names at the World Trade Center, and the difference of a Claudia Scalora involved with people next to the between that, those spots next to the World Trade Center, including the court. As people involved interstates and internationally, there are proofs because they have roles international other ways, but interstates, they have roles of all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the news names the intelligence next to them, the difference of the guilt with that, and the courts, the same thing, different natures of conjunction to them, the family members at the same time with the news, all sides of cases, and names that next to bodies don't make spots in criminal enterprises and private ones, even when they're not involved with those cases. Time collusion /S with the names and with you /S of them. There are mass fake transcripts and change fake recorded things on campuses, including ones filmed 24/7, like Central Connecticut State University. People are pretending that are things that are being recorded there that are not. And that's how they're leaking and pretending not as torture methods recorded before the World Trade Center attack. No. Self-promote as forced. In other words, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, has roles with Dean Judd and his kids, and with foreign and domestic military with West Hartford locations and on off Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, also with people with the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices and corrections offices, also involved with predicate acts with facts at and next to each of the campuses, intercities, and with names next to it and the differences of guilt, where and how everyone's just repeating fake things, and they're doing the opposite. But it's manifest that way relative to remote uses of the differences of guilt, roles of the breaching method to hide behind and through that. It's important not to leave out how all these distinct natures of evil against all the human differences that none wanted roles with, except none had non-distinctly, except while they were defending themselves from being distinctly victims of it, of the hyperforeign breaching method. Their defenses of that was this collusion /S with itself. We don't really have free speech yet. There are styles, needs, and natures with phone crime methods and pretending they don't realize. They prevent us short words the way nature wants and needs us to have them. So get me off the fake conversations with WFSB and note them leaking this, also with the intelligence next to them. I don't even know all their names, they know mine. A bunch of people tied to a victim's advocate from New Britain Superior Court years ago, increasingly have collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, first forced. They have roles then and now with more. And with the kids of the leaders of kids, involved with identity theft, fraud, slingers with them, fake motivations too. All truths used for lies. They can't get on paper. They've been putting fake things in databases, speaking it, self-guided roles with fake transcripts, fake ties to kids, even at the Wethersfield Police Department, fake ties to adults, fake transcripts. No one's checking that. These retired police chiefs from Wethersfield also personally with the same house /S involved with the courts, multiple courts and their family members, and layers of other nations. Their sense and sensibilities, they're fishing for means to have a conversation about things positive or negative so they can bullshit and pretend they didn't realize what came first. A bunch of people with Hartford courts and the Britain Superior Court and Connecticut's District Court have rules of predicate acts on my street increasingly against me and against all Americans. In other words, but we can only speak for ourselves. So get me off the fake conversations with the news and the interbranch at the same time that have been switching names and organized crime acts and methods? No. Criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and precedents? No. I self-promote again, but as I'm forced. Get me off fake conversations about the World Trade Center attack. It was a whole bunch of other organized crimes. They had roles that with forcing a principal child abuser and digital and all kinds of forensics crimes, digital and evidences crimes, and criminal foreign influences with whiting forensics and with state police families involved with the other police forms. At the same time, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones as evidences, we have to deal with the simultaneous. But you guys need to follow mandated law. Stop changing and faking what people say. A number of people with the comments, like Anthony Gagman, sought me out on social media. I never had one word of conversation with him in algebra class. Increasingly, teachers I had in algebra classes are increasingly Collusions/S with names next to where the Wethersfield police used to be and where they are now, as ones increasingly involved with all sides of Central Connecticut State University in Brighton, Connecticut, and add it and the differences of guilt with that used as time collusions with news and predicate acts with facts into databases as ones who effected requests for help to me and to others before the World Trade Center attack. I found out it was about people also involved with the depositions of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, and their family members, various natures of federal criminals, and their family members also recorded involved with predicate acts against me. A bunch of different natures of organized crimes, acts, and methods. Kids and adults at the campuses I went to were influenced, were forced, tricked, and persuaded to roles with the people putting fake things in databases also from off the campuses, off the crime scenes and all sides of criminal and civil cases by a method /S with them all as the plural parts. It uses and used already. They recorded all sides of criminal and civil cases, collusions with the crime scenes and layers of other nations, personally and professionally with their family members. Also, where the breaching method uses those apparent and even the real motivations for them to hide sequence shifts and for them to hide behavior racketeering worse than war crimes. Where they have psychopath, not even a doctor, where they have psychopath takes on calmness and their value of their definitions of calmness or decorum, and simultaneously of their takes on their roles with aggression and judgment, and let alone corrections. The criminally foreign influence tactically delusions wrought with the state judicial branch officers and corrections officers, and the difference of the guilt there or the names next to it, or just passing by. Why? Because there's a breaching method replaced right from the founder's communications and natures itself. Vaccines. Please fix the fake news. Stop changing and faking and preventing short words. And allowing the agencies and the news is recording, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They're using crime methods of making examples of their free speech, pretending they don't realize roles of predicate acts methods with phones too, fake transcripts, pretending, well, where's the evidences of it? They're fishing with directions that they even have collusions they know of. With intelligence tells them to change the fake and to hide things. They're demonstrating this. See, but they use those directions, they use those truths for lies. All lies. And or screen, worse, the breaching method. Its use of criminal insidiousness nature, pretending other, with positive treatments, negative treatments. Only criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments and identity values / variable progression treatments are allowed to be heard and or that body is sent. Again, even if it's a majority of people, even if it's everyone together. Trying to counter syntactically. That would play. That's that which originally and still has the game with the black pupils, whites of eyes. but it left out as evidence /S. I tell Beth so many ways, boxing. I keep those things.